Yeah, now it is recording. Thanks for the reminder. So folders are like separation of orchestrated tenant for department wise, right? Because let us suppose you have 10 users in orchestrator, okay? And in that 3 users are from finance, and in that case we can create a folder for finance, and we can add these 3 users to folder. So only these 3 users will have access to this particular folder. Let us suppose if I create a folder, I can create a folder from here, and I can just create finance. Okay. And if you come here, you could able to see my user because I have already like I created this folder. That's the reason for which by default my user is added to this. Or else we need to add the user from here, right? So this is how we can manage the user access also at the folder level. And also we can add the machines also. Like whatever the processes we have inside of this folder, these can be executed only inside on these machines only. Like uh, like from here in the manage access, we have all the users, whoever we configured. Okay. And we have all the machines, whatever is configured. But we need to add the users and we need to add the machines here in order to execute our processes or to access the resources, right? So at the folder level also, we can manage the user access. And monitoring is like in order to check how your job is and how many each and every job status, how many are in running state and how many are in pending and how many are resumed or so whatever the statuses we have. So we can see that here in the monitoring. And also we can see the machines, how many machines are available, how many are disconnected. So we can check all this and also at the process executions. And we can see transactions, how many transactions are processed and how many are with an exception. And we can even check the SLAs also. SLA is nothing but service level agreement, full form is, which means what is the turnaround time for it? Like let us suppose you are processing transactions and the transaction needs to be processed in an hour as soon as it is got added to the orchestra. So it needs to be processed inside of that time. In case if it is reaching that time or extend, if it is processed after that time, then we will be having an alert here that it was not processed in time. So this also we can check here, right? We can check the licenses. So monitoring is like to check all your activity, all your robot activity, all your processes, and all your transactions, whether it has got processed or not. And manage access is to add the users and giving the permissions to the users. And machines is the machines which are added to the orchestrator in order to execute our process. And the packages, this we will talk it at later. Okay. App version, this is related to the UiPath apps, whatever we are creating, like not only UiPath apps, like it is kind of process mining or whatever other applications we are building using the UiPath other products that will be reflected here. And if we go to the audit, this is something that like whatever the activity you are performing in orchestra, either adding of the user or creating a folder or creation of a process, every activity will be recorded. Who like we can check like which user had created taken that action. Let us suppose if something was unexpectedly got deleted, and because of that we have an impact. Right? So in that case, we can come back to the audit and we can check who did that particular action. So each and every action we are performing, that will be recorded here. Just now we created a folder, right, with the name finance, and it was created by the user. So this is how we can check each and every action from the audit. And credentials, we will be storing our credentials as part of our automation, right? Like login, if you want to log into any application, we will be storing those credentials in the orchestrator. Right? So here we can configure multiple credential stores. By default, we have the orchestrator database, but we can even add other credential managers as well. Like we have CyberArk, Azure Vault, AWS Secret Managers. So we have all this, and we can add. Why we are having this is like some companies may doesn't want to store their credentials in the orchestrated database, and they want to store only in the CyberArk. So we will configure the CyberArk so that the robot can fetch the credentials from CyberArk. Of course, it will be stored in the assets, but the end credentials will be going into this credentials and webhooks. See, webhooks is a very advanced topic, I can say, like because based on some action performed in the orchestrator, it will be sending the notification or triggering another action on any other application. So based on the action performed, we can subscribe to some events. Let us suppose we subscribe or we created a webhook just to when the process is got failed. So immediately this webhook will be invoked. And the licenses, whatever the licenses we have, that will be that we can see here. So this is just to view how many licenses we have and how many are consumed. But the management is done from the home page, automation cloud. Like from here in the admin, we can manage our licenses. But here you can see how many licenses are there and till what time this is licensed. Alerts. Alerts is whatever the settings we made, like for each and every alert, critical alerts or something, we will be getting these notifications. And we have the filters also. So we just need to keep this all. Yes, if you have seen, this is got disconnected. So in such a whatever the alert we have, those alerts we can see it here in the alerts and settings. These are the general settings generally we do, and time zone is much more important because based on this time zone only, whatever the schedules of the process we are going to perform will get affected. So let us suppose we are in the UTC as per our settings. And in case if you want to schedule it for IST and the process, if you schedule as per IST and it will not be triggered as per our time, it will look at this particular time zone and based on that, it will execute the process, right? And deployments, these are like where we want to publish our packages and libraries and how it moves to it. Mail, whatever the alerts we have, right? Similarly, we can add email notifications for the alerts. Right? And this robot security, scalability, these are like we will not be using much, but we will be just enabling all these tools. And we can have a calendar defined. Let us suppose you want to schedule a process only on my working days. So I can just keep my working days calendar here. Whatever the non-working day we have, we can just disable for that particular day. So we can just simply have this calendar defined so that even if we are keeping, like we will get that in the schedules. So we will see what is schedules and all. So these are the cloud connections. I think this recently came into UiPath. Like cloud robot images are when we are working with Studio Web. In that case, we will be executing our process from the images. And but when we are dealing with the cloud robots, it is we need to make sure that like we are not using any on-premises applications and desktop applications because cloud image is where operating system where we can execute our process, but we need to have everything. No, is an web application which doesn't require to have VPN also. So this is all about the tenants at the high level. And if we go to the folder, here we have the monitoring also available here, specific to this particular folder. But here in the tenants folder, tenant whatever we have is like the entire for orchestrator, where it is considered for all the folders as well. And here automations. Here are the processes, whatever we want to execute as part of our automation and which are part of this particular folder. And the jobs is nothing but whatever the process we are going to execute, that will be considered as a job. 1 second, guys. So, sorry, guys. So what are the processes we have? The execution of the process, we call it as jobs. Okay. And apps is something that like UiPath app or something, whatever we have created. That we can see it here. And triggers is something when we want to execute our process in a fixed time based on some recurring time or based on some event, we can have these triggers. Like we have 4 types of triggers. One is time trigger, and other is the queue-based trigger, event triggers, and API triggers. So when it comes to time trigger, we can schedule our process for every 1 minute, or we can schedule it for frequency. We can change. We can have minute by minute, or hourly, or daily, weekly, or day of the month, a day of a week, or we can even go for the advanced. When we keep on, so these are like fixed, we can simply configure. When it comes to the advanced, we need to give the cron expression, which means these are like recurring and a fixed or regular intervals. Let us suppose if we want to schedule it at an irregular intervals. Let us assume we want to schedule for every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 3 p.m. So that we cannot schedule from here, right? So that we can schedule it from help of cron expressions. And calendars, we already discussed, right? Non-working day calendars under the tenant. So that we can select here. Once we added the calendar there, that we can have here, so that whatever the holidays we mentioned in that particular calendar, on those days, though we have that schedule, the process will not be triggered. So this is how the time triggers will work. The queue triggers. So we will come to this, but queues, we will discuss that. But as soon as some data is added to the UiPath Orchestrator queues, and based on the data got added, the process will be triggered. So this we call it as a queue-based trigger. And event-based triggers, like when we are working with integration services, we can have the process to be triggered based on an event happening in any of your applications where we have the integration services connected. Let us assume if you are using an O365 email, and you can have the trigger enabled for any new email coming into that particular mailbox. As soon as the mail is received, then the process will be triggered. So thus we call it as an API event triggers and the API triggers. So there will be a requirement that you may need to start your particular process, execute your process based on, from an external application. So we can define the API trigger here, and we will be getting all the details API details, and we will be passing those details to that particular application team so that they will configure in order to trigger our process from this particular API call. Okay. And monitoring. This is similar to very similar to what we have seen under the tenants, and we have, but not everything. We have limited, which is like we covered in that as well, and queues. So we have queues, assets, and storage buckets, right? We will come back to these three later, and let us go to the test. So we have UiPath test suite also available for testing of projects or testing of an application. So we have a separate product for testing that we call this UiPath test suite, where it contains UiPath test manager, and we can build our automation test cases using Studio, and we can have this published here. So from here, we can have the test executions enabled. So this is related to the testing tab, and we can have the test cases, test sets, and we can see the test execution results and everything here. So all these resources, whatever we have here, is related to the testings. And if we go to the setting, so whatever we have seen under the tenant when we created the folder, the similar we can see the settings. Like we can add the users or we can add the machines. And when we are adding the users, we can restrict the user permissions here. Okay, so this is all about different resources here. And for now, let us go back to the queues, assets, and storage buckets. Okay, and we will come to the processes and everything again. Like once we will publish a sample process and then we will come. So now let us go for the queues. Queues is nothing but data to will be adding data to process. So it is a very simple word, right? But whatever the data we want to process as part of the process, we will be uploading that data or adding that data to the queues, and the same data will be consumed. Okay. And how we can add the data and how we can consume the data, that activities we are going to see. But queue is a kind of container holding data to be processed. So whatever as part of our process, whatever the data we want to process, that we are going to add into the queues. And why do we need to add? Without adding also we can perform our tasks, right? But why we are going to add is by using orchestrator queues, we can have multiple processes, multiple robots to execute the same process without any duplication. Which means when you are dealing with any Excel or a database, right? Again, we need to update the status back, and there might be a possibility that like already processed might be picked up. So there will be a lot of circus we need to do so that we can easily handle it here, right? And easy to implement the retry. So let us suppose a transaction is failed, and if we want to retry that, so that easily can be done in the orchestrator. So let us go ahead and create it. So I need to create a new queue. We will be providing a sample queue name, right? And here we have the replies. So auto retry, you can increase the number as like you can keep one or two like that you can do, and enforce the unique reference. So when you enforce the unique reference, you cannot add the duplicate data to the queues. Okay. And we can even store these queues in the encrypted format. Like when we go to the orchestrator queues and we can view the data, but if you set this store in the encrypted format, and we cannot view the data, right? And retention policy. When the process is completed and we executed our process and we will be having all the data, right? But after 30 days, I want to delete it because I want to make my database with a low load. And I doesn't want to keep each and everything on the database for never ending time. And I doesn't require more than 30 days. In case if you require, you can change it to 180, like maximum of 6 months. Okay. We have seen the under the monitoring and SLAs. So if you enable this SLA, we need to select this. Okay. But we are not doing it. We click on add. So this is the queue which we created as of now. And what are the different activities we have for the queues in UI? Add queue item, bulk add queue items, add transaction item. So these are the three activities we have in order to add our data to the orchestrator queues. And what is the difference between these? Add queue item will add a transaction data to our queue item, whatever the queue we have. And bulk add queue item, let us suppose you have a data in an Excel and you want to add all of that data into different transactions, each row into a different transaction. Right? In that case, we doesn't want to loop through each of the row. And we can simply use the bulk add queue item. So all the transactions will get added to the queue. And add transaction item is also going to add your one particular transaction data. But here, what is the difference between add queue item and add transaction item? Add queue item will, okay, before we come that, what are the different statuses we have for queues? New, in progress, right? Failed, successful, abandoned. So these are the three different statuses we have as part of our automation, right? The add queue item will directly add the data.
Retry is also done.
Oh yeah, retry. So add queue item will when you use the add queue item activity, and that will be added with the status new. And when you go for add transaction item, that will be added into the with the status of in progress, and the same transaction will be processed automatically. So this is how. What is the difference? That is the difference between add queue item and add transaction item. Okay. And let us add some data. One transaction item, not nothing much. Add queue item. And you can select by default, you can change it to, and you can just select the folder from here also. Whatever to whichever folder we have. So to that particular folder, it will be added. And we can select the queue name, sample queue, and we can just add the data. Name, you have this is, and you can click on add entry in order to add one more. Click on save. So let us execute this. But as of now, we have nothing, right? Now click on refresh. View transactions. You can go to the click on view transactions. And here we already have the transaction, and we can even go for the view details. So name, location. So we can access this in the later process whenever we want to execute or consume this data. Okay, close. So in case if we go with the transaction item, it will be with the process in progress, status in progress. But here it is in the new. Okay, and what are the activities we have in order to read the data? Get transaction item. So this will retrieve the transaction data and change the status to from new to in progress. And this always retrieve transactions with status new. Okay, and changes the status to in progress. So this is how the get transaction item will work. And we have one more, get UI. This will retrieve list of transaction items with the status defined. So even we can get other statuses transactions also, but that is with we need to select. So if we go to the get transaction item, so we'll go with the cleanup. And the output of this is going to be a queue item. So I'll just control there transaction data. Okay. And here in the variables, you can say variable type is queue item. And how do we access the data? So I'll just use a message box, transaction data. To access the values from the orchestrator queue, we will be using the method dot specific content, and we will be passing on whatever the key we want. Like I want to get it for the name dot toString. Content select, right? And dot specific content. Rip you there? Generally, we should not get this error, but let me check it out why I'm getting it. Yeah, without I'm giving this correct, but why I'm getting this error? Let me do one thing. Let me open a new project and see. No, the syntax is correct, but I'm not sure why we are getting this error. Okay, so with this method, we will generally get the data, and the syntax is correct, but I'm not very sure why we are getting this error. So we'll see that later. Like anyhow, like tomorrow we are going to deal with the orchestrator key items as part of RD framework. So we will see that in tomorrow's session. Anyhow. So once we execute this, and if I refresh this, the status is changed to in progress. And now if I execute, right, we will not get any data because there is no new transaction items available. Right? So, but we can get the in progress also using get queue items active. In the get queue items, we can select the queue name. And here in the properties, we have an option to select which with which status we want to get the transactions. And we have different transactions available and also the time from which it was got added and when it is got processed, and we have some priorities also to be used. So all these configurations we can define as part of these properties, and it will return as the list of queue items. So if I create here the variables, we have list of queue items. So this is how it will work. So this is all about the orchestrator queues. And also we have assets. So assets, we have four types of assets: text, Boolean, integer, and credential. So text, Boolean, and integer, all these three will work in a similar way, whereas the credential will work in a different way in the sense, I can create a text asset by giving some value, create, and I can create a credential asset. If I change it to the credential, I get username and password, user, password, given create. So if we come here, right, we can see the value, but here we could not able to see. And if we go to edit and we have the password, you cannot see the password again. Initially, when you're typing, you can see, but you cannot see that. That's the reason for which we will be storing all of our credentials in the credential assets. And what are the different activities we have for the assets? Get asset, we have get credentials, and we have set asset, and we have set credentials. So get asset is to retrieve the value from the assets, and the set asset is to update the value back to the assets. And we have the get credential. In order to retrieve the credentials, username and password. Username is in the string and the password is in secure string. And set credential is to update or credentials. So get is to retrieve the data, set is to update the data. So this is how the assets will work. Okay. And when it comes to the storage buckets, so we can store our files, whatever we want to store in the orchestrator, in this storage buckets. If we click on create, we can have three sources. Either it can be UiPath Orchestrator database, or you can go to Azure storage or Amazon AWS S3 bucket. So we can have this storage bucket configured, and we can store the files inside of our storage. So majority of the times, storage buckets we are going to use as part of our document understanding process. Because when we want to host our files for a validation in the action center, so we will be storing all those files in the storage bucket. So there we will be utilizing the storage buckets very well. And yeah, so this is all about the a very high level overview of Orchestrator. And regarding the processes, we are going to see later. And we are open for the questions. If you have any questions, let us take up the questions. Yes, get to value. So let me try this. Someone have given me, but I'll do it right. Mm, mm. So maybe something got changed in between, and it's been a while I done the development. Previously, like we used to have only the specific content method, and it doesn't have this need to be this get value or different. So yeah, thanks, Nilesh.
The latest
Thanks.
updates for Python.
Yeah. Regarding the password, you have it out. Yes, please. What is the difference between queue item and transaction item? Right? Okay. So queue item and transaction item both are same, but when you are only the names are different. And queue items is a data type actually. And the transaction item is generally we call it as the transaction which needs to be processed. That we call it as a transaction item. But both are same. And in terms of using the activities of add queue item and add transaction item, in that sense, we can say add queue item will add the transaction data with the status new. Add transaction item will add the data, but add the data with the status in progress, and the same will be processed in the same execution. So we are just adding the data to the orchestrator just for the tracing purpose or record purpose, that like how many transactions we processed and what are different status. And we have some activities also, set transaction status. That will help you to update the status of a transaction. Now it was changed to in progress, right? That can be updated either to the failed or successful with the help of set transaction status activity. So any more questions, guys? Sugar, each island and the people something that I completed. We do not have the data, I guess. So we can ask this to you can directly message to Pradeep or Cyclones or over the WhatsApp so that they will help you.